Welcome back, everyone. We've heard from so many incredible speakers at this stage, and there's still a few more to go. I'm Amy, designer advocate at Figma, and your community stage host, and I am so excited to welcome our next speaker, Beau Wingfield. Beau will take us on a journey through a video game design system and learn how to add some character to your squeaky clean system and make it scalable. So everyone, give it up for Beau.
What's up, everybody? I'm Beau. I'm stoked to finally be here at my first live config as a speaker and in general, so pretty cool. A little bit about me. I've been a designer for over 17 years. I've worked in many different industries, disciplines during my career. Most recently in the gaming industry at EA as a senior UI designer, as well as currently for myself independently under my design studio, Coastal Coast Studio. My love for design systems started way back when, but really started during the early beta of Figma back on the web in 2016. That was a pivotal moment. To get here was a long and winding road, I'm sure, like a lot of you. So everybody has an origin story, right? Mine is set back in the late 1990s to early 2000s. I was a young teen figuring out who I was through like angst, art, play, exploration. My admiration for art and design started way back then. I would spend hours upon hours sketching in my room, usually drawing cars, comics, video game characters, and logos sometimes. All while listening to this album that you might recognize, Sum 41's All Killer, No Filler, on my boombox. One of their best, right? As you can see, I preferred drawing with graphite, keeping things mostly grayscale with a touch of color here and there. Later on during college, I took one of these color blindness tests. You may have all seen this or done this. I found out that I'm red-green colorblind, which is super common, but yeah, pretty awesome. With some other colors mixed in as well. So for instance, I have no clue what numbers are in these circles. They just look like blobs to me. Some of you might be able to relate. And if you're relating in the moment, I'm hoping you're not finding out you might be colorblind at this time as well. Hopefully not. If so, sorry, but maybe I helped a bit. So it made a lot of sense that I steered clear from using colors when I was a kid. Eventually, though, I didn't want to let that be like a crutch or an excuse as an artist and a designer. Other days after school, you would catch me outside riding a skateboard, BMX bike, inline skates. I also loved all the fringe water sports like wake skating and skimboarding. I grew up in Florida, Clearwater and Orlando, so I did that a lot as well. A lot of lakes around. But the culture of these sports specifically had a lot of influence on my aesthetic and preferred style of design. Like most other kids in that era, I really wanted something like this, a gaming system. And eventually, my brother and I ended up getting one for Christmas. It was a Sega Genesis like this. It looked this old. We were super hooked and couldn't get enough of it. Later on, we got an N64 like this one, and we played games like GoldenEye, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Star Wars Rogue Squadron. But my favorite was definitely the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series. Yeah, especially this one, the second one that came out in the year Y2K. Back then, there was no dashboard to track your hours, right? Like you play for hours and hours and hours. I'm sure I logged thousands on this game, though. This was the first time that I really connected with the culture that I lived in, playing that game, like reading something like this, Thrasher Magazine, watching Jackass, Viva La Bam, 411 VM videos, with all my skater friends, and and family and trying out all that stupid stuff in shopping carts and stuff. And it connected with a video game I could really interact with on a deeper level. And I was super stoked about that. This is not me. You might recognize him, but it's also not him. It's ChatGPT. Helped me out with a retro pic of Tony Hawk playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater. He's got his X Games controller and stuff over here, if you can see it. Pretty legit. He's got an extra finger, though, so it's definitely ChatGPT. Fast forward to 2018. I broke out into the gaming industry, and I joined EA, but not yet on a gaming team. Over the course of about 6 years, I worked at EA in different ways, a bunch of fun projects with some of the best people. The first being a complete redesign of the now 15-year-old game launcher known as Origin, RIP-ish. Some of you probably have used this and played or used this to launch games on the PC. So while in this design system core team and product teams, I helped create new components, documentation, and screens that shaped the new interface that was going to become the new Origin. It was my first large-scale design system, and sorry about that. And I was able to create and test a lot of individual screens. Some of these shown here, documentation, and then moved to the product team and used the system to build out those screens, which was like the dream to be able to do both. So after a few years, we launched the brand new EA PC and Mac apps to more than 13 million subscribers across the world. Pretty crazy. And then fast forward again to 2023, I returned to EA as a senior UI designer to work for Full Circle Studio, the makers of this popular video game, Skate, or the community likes to call it, like you may call it Skate 4, direct competitor to Tony Hawk in a way. So it was a dream role for me, of course. I've skateboarded most of my life. I play video games, and now I design UI for a living. So I got to do a lot of really cool stuff on this project, and getting to work with a lot of great people again was awesome. Some of the features that I helped design, like these, were the communication wheel, a little bit hard to see there, missions, and this almost like a mini Spotify within the game music playlist manager. Those and about 17 other features I worked on went live in the game, and I was super proud of that. I also managed the large-scale design system, intentionally blurred out here, but had over 100 components, countless variants, as some of these large-scale systems have, as well as multiple libraries that were extended. I also had a hand in creating artwork and assets both in and outside of the game. If you've played, you might recognize V, who is the in-game kind of AI NPC that follows you around and talks to you. And then also, I was able to create from a old spinner that was currently in the previous game, recreated this screen loader animation that's on every screen loading screen of a skateboard doing a kickflip, and I frame animated this by hand, which was very, very fun. And then lastly, call back to Skate 3. I worked on a sticker design for like an internal fun competition that was to the Hall of Meat. And after about 3 years, I said goodbye to Skate and to V. This is another version of me in the ChatGPT San Amsterdam. And I'm still playing Skate and skating most days, though. And currently, I mentioned earlier, I'm creating digital products and brands for clients under my design studio, Coastal Co Studio. But enough about me, right? Let's get into the nuts and the truck bolts of why I'm here. So when you think of a design system, it's usually clean and flat, right? We've seen a lot of these. We've used a lot of these, created a lot of these. I'm talking aesthetically on the surface level. There might be shapes, masks, and other things applied, but overall things are pretty clean and tidy, right? Typically something like this, Material Design UI, or Apple designs iOS and iPadOS UIs. Maybe still relevant, Polaris from Shopify. Of course, you would all agree that these have their place and they do it really, really well, right? But what if you need to include elements like these, like really sketchy things, texture, rich elements? They don't really fit into the typical box of one of those design systems. And you need to fit them into a vastly different style guide, something like this. Could be elements like an edgy marker font, punk rock references, gritty textures, and rough-edged iconography. Just like when I was a kid, creating and adding texture to art and to designs was really home to me. So I helped create elements like these for Skate's fresh and gritty style guide on their UI team. Some of these made the cut, others didn't, but they were just super fun to draw and play around with. And that's part of the process, right? So using a mix of Figma brushes, Photoshop on a tablet, and Procreate brushes on an iPad, I sketched out just a bunch of different types of shapes, arrows, textures, anything that I could think of that might fit in the game, even if I didn't know where they would go yet, or if they would make it into the game. On that team, we went through a process of concepting splash screens using the textures, elements, and styles we had created previously. I did a little bit of 3D stuff too with Spline 3D. That was super fun, just to change it up completely. And by doing so, I came up with these different styles and layouts and varied levels of texture and depth. Some of them, again, had the potential to become something. It was really just an exercise to figure out what could work in the game. So you're going to want to think about, in this process, building character into the aesthetics of your components, right? If you want it to fit into a different type of style guide like previously showed. Instead of using generic shapes, traditional layouts, and flat styles, you can get creative and add some unique characteristics to each component and create depth and character like these. So in the top left, you've got the top navigation for Skate. You can see the texture over the icons. The icons are very stylized. There's texture, like there's not a square, perfectly square box. The tooltip below that has texture around it. Even these selectors, they have square and rectangular backgrounds, but you've got a little bit of texture over the icons. And this communication wheel in the center here, a little hard to see on the bottom, but there's a lot of texture on all the states. And then in some sort of a grid tile, a tile grid system you would have here, you'd have some texture over the active states as well. But you're going to run into obstacles, right? Like anybody else, any other system, you're going to run into problems. Especially like, how do I make this texture repeat and scale? So it's easy to do it in a one-off on your own, but not scaling it. Or does this texture work on a different type of background other than a solid background? So it could be a video, could be a gameplay HUD that's moving. Or after talking to your tech team or your developers, you realize you can't use that sick texturized shape effect due to game engine constraints or other constraints. But that's how you know you're skating the right line. And you can adapt and maybe even create something new out of that. You need some grit to push on though, right? Just like in skateboarding, you're going to fall and fall again. Without grit and a bit of competitive fight within yourself, you're not going to get back up and land that difficult trick. Or if you're not a skateboarder, and in our case, you won't find that balance between plane and grain. So let's level up from flat to rich components and find that balance. For an easy beginner's exercise, we're going to start out with a solid layout for a component like this mission notification. Keep an eye on Tony Hawk's outline and then the background of the actual container itself. You're going to start to build in character by adding a bit of texture. As you can see now, it's barely there around the edges, and then there's subtle texture behind it. A bit hard to see on this screen, but it's there. And then rough edges, like this. That'll give it some more texture and character as well. And lastly, a little bit of depth with the shadow underneath it. You don't want to overdo it though, right? You want to balance it and satisfy accessibility requirements like color blindness things or contrast if you need to. So here they are side by side. You can notice there's a much more character on the right here. It's way more texture rich, and it feels more alive, right? So what next? You're going to make it all scale. This is super imperative for games and other digital products, right? You need to be able to scale things. Because if you can't scale it, does it really work? This can take on a lot of meanings, but I mean it literally within your design system as a designer, like scaling your components. So enter the 9-slice component. You may have heard of this or used this term already, but if not, a 9-slice is a 2D image resizing technique that prevents visual distortion. In other words, it's an efficient way to break up a component used for elements like background containers, and it's great if you want to show unique images like textured edges or other shapes on corners and sides of a container. So as you can see here in Skater customization screen, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? This is kind of a hub for customizing your player, your character. So in the active state here where it's blue, you can see that there is a lot of texture going on. It really highlights that area, right? There's even texture around the edges and inside the tile itself. Then all in the other inactive states, there's some texture around the edges and on the icons as well. There's that top navigation again. But then you notice like the pip notifications, there's no texture there, and they're perfect circles to keep that balance a little bit. And here, in the modal's light background, you can see some paper texture, you can see some textured edges. There is an outline here that's dark that has no texture, and there's a little bit of texture on the buttons as well. This will allow for variety and interesting combos in your different designs. And that seems pretty easy, but how? So a little tutorial here. You're going to start off with a container shape with textured edges inside of a frame. You can make it as textured as you want or as least textured as you want. They can be raster or vector-based, but vector is always going to be the best for scaling, right? You can texture everything like what's shown here or not. And this is where it gets a little interesting. With 4 guidelines, you're going to divide the container into 9 sections. Make sure the corners are 1-to-1 square in ratio for the best scalability. Now that you have your 9 sections, starting from the top left, moving over to the right, and then going down each row, you'll have your sequence, and you have 3 rows and 3 columns. This order is super important because it'll be mapped correctly in the game engine or end product. So you're going to use the slice tool in Figma by choosing it from the toolbar or using the hotkey S. Draw your slice boxes based on the 4 guidelines that you made before. Then you can export the slices. And there you go. You have 9 slices separated out. Pretty simple, right? Anybody can do this. But you're going to want to create a component out of these from those slices. So you select them all, you group them, and create your main component out of that. And if you want to make it scale, you're going to position things using the constraints. So you've got your corners, you got your sides, and then you have a box in the center, number 5. That's just going to be basically a flat shape with a solid background. If you want to keep it all vector, though, because this slice tool will just break it up into images like PNGs, you need to slice them out manually, which takes a little bit longer, but it's well worth it for scaling. If you want to make your life even easier and do a raster version, use a plugin like this one from Cube Studio. I've used it a few times, and it's phenomenal. Highly recommend it, and I'm also not paid to say that. And for extra points, if you want to take this component even further and make it fully customizable for users, you're going to create atomic components out of each slice. You're going to add variants to each type like this. So you'll have 3 variants per slice, essentially. This will give you a lot of variety, and you're going to want to fill in the extra background space like you can see here on the tops and bottoms of the sides. That way, if you have any overflow when scaling it, it just kind of seamlessly connects. Next, you're going to replace those slice images within that main component with these atomic components. So you're going to remove your PNGs or your vector, and you're going to toss these in there. And then you'll add props to change each slice individually, and you'll get maximum variation out of that. So here's an example. You'll be able to swap each corner and edge to suit your needs using props, as seen in the top right. So there's rough, there's clean, there's rough alternates. And to take it and also to help randomize shapes, so your backgrounds are always super unique. You can also scale this container now that this is all set up. Make it as large as you want, and it seamlessly scales and stretches. And you can also spin it for way more variation. Pretty sweet, right? So putting it all into practice, because it doesn't work in the real world unless it's just sitting in, if it's not in some sort of a game or some sort of a product in the end result and just living in your Figma. So here's an example of live gameplay within Skate, and it's going to put the 9-slice on full display within the game. You're going to notice that anywhere a rectangular container shape is being displayed, it's using that 9-slice component.
I hear the kids like to play
So for instance, there's your mission notification on the left. That's in the build. You also have your mission info panel that popped down below it, and the music toolbar at the bottom here in the light. That's using the 9-slice component as well, just a variation of it. You're also going to have album tiles that use it, and their hover states. And then also when you go into like a playlist in the music playlist manager, on the left here for these tiles you'll have it, and on the right for the album tile, you'll have it being used as well. These all have textured edges. They all scale seamlessly both within Figma and within the game engine. So, all that being said, I'm going to leave you with a few things to consider, right? How can you add character to your design system? And can you find the grit to push on and get up when you slam the metaphorical pavement? Thank you so much. It's been awesome. Nice to meet you all. Appreciate it.